for New York and sending a message to the nation.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Dan Clark. New York has now entered a new phase of COVID, and it's getting worse. There are now more people hospitalized than we've seen since June, and the positivity rate jumped above 3% this week for the first time since May. And new rules are now in effect to curb the virus. Restaurants, bars, and gyms all have to close by 10 p.m., and private gatherings are capped at 10 people, even at home. And Governor Cuomo said this week he's expecting things to get worse before they get better.
So the rates will all go up. We expect the rates will continue to go up through the fall and into the winter. The long-term prognosis is get to a vaccine as quickly as possible.
And that's all happening while voters in New York continue to wait for the final results of this year's elections. Joining me in studio to talk is Marina Villeneuve from the Associated Press and Jimmy Vielkind from the Wall Street Journal. Thank you both so much.
Good to see you.
So let's talk about the virus first, because I feel like that is somehow overshadowing the election this week in New York, because we know New York went for Joe Biden. We have some close races in New York, obviously, but the uptick of the virus is insane. With 3% for the first time since May, hospitalizations are at their highest since June. Marina, tell me how this compares to what we've seen in the spring. Are we looking at the same thing that we went through in March and April?
Well, thankfully, we aren't seeing anywhere near the highs that we reached in April, where there were over 18,000 people in the hospital at one time, losing up to, 800 or more lives a day in hospitals alone and nursing homes alone. But, since like late August or September, there's just been a continued increase. And, in the last 11 days alone, we've seen more lives lost than we did in, July or August of this year. So I think it's just a new phase, and a lot of rural communities that sort of might have hoped that this was going to be more of a densely populated downstate issue are really having to grapple with this for the first time.
That is one of the interesting parts of this to me, because I was talking in the spring to Pat Galvan. He's a Republican senator who is the highest ranking Republican on the Health Committee in the Senate. And I asked him at the time, these rural communities, if this comes here, is the hospital network prepared for that? Because usually we just see in these small areas, they have emergency rooms that fit 5 or 6 people. So I can't imagine with COVID-19 in these small areas, if they have to pack these emergency rooms, what's going to happen? So I guess the question is, do we know why this is happening? And I'll go to you in a second, Jimmy, but Marina, do we know why we're seeing this uptick right now? Yeah,
the past couple of days I've been traveling in Chemung County and particularly in Elmira, where they have continued to see this uptick. And there are just so many different reasons right now, and there is a lot of community spread in southern tier and western New York. It's really hard to pinpoint, but there have been large gatherings at churches. There was a wedding in late August that spread to about 5 or 6 counties. We spoke last time about how SUNY had, students had arrived in August and there wasn't the testing beforehand, outbreaks at prisons. It is at such a level right now that hospitals there are trying to prepare, and they do have surge plans to sort of deal with a crisis if it happens. But a big issue is staffing, and how are we gonna, if people are getting infected and having to quarantine, it's a big question about how we're gonna deal with this, because in the spring we were able to get volunteers from all over the country to come to New York.
This is scary for people in upstate New York, definitely. Jimmy, in the spring, something that helped a lot of people's fears was the governor with his daily briefings. How are we seeing him respond to this latest wave of COVID-19 compared to what we saw in March and April?
It's been very interesting. The governor is loath to do a broad-based shutdown, which is what happened starting in March on, I think it was March 23rd, back in the spring. And instead what they're doing is they're trying to do cluster focuses. So right now we know that the cities of Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse are in yellow zones that restricts gatherings, that it poses additional restrictions on dining. It requires additional testing for school personnel and school pupils. And I was talking the other day to one of the governor's top advisors on COVID, Gareth Rhodes, the deputy superintendent for the Department of Financial Services. He said that the hope is that when you put a yellow zone in place in these communities, that it has these restrictions, but it also has some shock value. It also gets residents to say, hey, we've got to mask up. Hey, we've really got to cut these mass gatherings. We want the schools open. We don't want to have a broad-based lockdown. And the administration, including Governor Cuomo himself, have pointed out that there are many places around the state where these zone restrictions have been put in place, and they have subsequently been rolled back. So the governor on Thursday said that he hoped that he could avoid a broad-based shutdown. We'll have to see, though. The infection rates are rising everywhere. They're rising in New York, but the rates are still lagging behind other states. And I think it's important to note states that weren't hit nearly as hard by the COVID first wave in the spring as New York was. It was the hardest hit state. Our infections, our deaths really spiked quite sharply. And there's some thought that the way the virus went through the state, it sort of has made that this time around a little bit of an easier run, particularly in downstate areas.
Let's all hope. Speaking of downstate, let's switch to the election for a little bit. Jimmy, you had a great story this week looking at Trump voters in New York City and how there was an increase this year in the number of people who voted for the president in this year's elections compared to 2016. What happened here? Was it just increased turnout?
Well, increased turnout is part of that story, certainly. And this year was the first time in New York history where you had 9 days of early voting for a presidential election. It's the first time that you had essentially the ability for any New Yorker to vote by mail by requesting an absentee ballot. And so we did see greater participation, but we saw, even after many unpopular and controversial policies advanced by the president, and despite his general unpopularity in the state, his base did go up in some unlikely areas. So I was able to analyze, with the help of the City of New York's Graduate Center, Center for Urban Research, some of the returns by assembly district. And the highest percentage gains that Donald Trump won in New York City were in the South Bronx. These are majority Latino districts, generally lower income areas, not necessarily parts of Trump's base, and normally considered to be Democratic bastions. Now, make no mistake, Joe Biden won handily in these areas, but the increase was, according to my reporting with my colleague Emma Tucker, an attraction by entrepreneurs, including some Latino small business owners, a great amount of organizing by evangelical Christians. We know the Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr. Has long tried to organize Latino and Hispanic ministers in the South Bronx to sort of be more of a conservative voting bloc. And also the effects, which were not just evident in the South Bronx, but on Long Island and in South Brooklyn and Staten Island, where the law and order messaging of the president, coupled with some of the criminal justice changes that were enacted over the past 2 years by New York State Democrats, gave a cocktail that motivated people to come out and support President Trump.
That's really interesting. Everybody can read it at the Wall Street Journal. Jimmy Vielkind from the Wall Street Journal, Marina Villeneuve from the Associated Press. Thank you both so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.